Well, good afternoon and welcome. Today is Wednesday, October 25th, 2023. We are gathered for an afternoon work session, and our topic today is to get an update, performance measures regarding public information and records. My name is John Kafalis, County Commissioner, Chair Pro Tem. I'm joined by Commissioner Stevens from District 2. Commissioner Shattuck McNally is excused. And of course, we have our County Manager, Lorenda Volker. Lorenda, is there anything you would like to say to cue this up? And then we'll turn it over to Matthew.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is one of those quarterly reports we do to provide performance measures for some of the service areas. This service area you see is largely made up of our elected offices, and they have worked closely with Matthew and with Julie Elsner in the future, who will take over Matthew's spot. But Matthew, you want to get started and walk through office by office?
Yeah, thank you. Matthew Behunin, Budget Team Lead. I have been the coordinator for the Performance Measure Program, and I just want to start off by thanking our elected officials for their investment in time and resources and staff in tracking these, recording data. It does take resources, county resources, to track and improve. And so today we're going to go Clerk and Recorder, Treasurer and Public Trustee, and then finish with the Assessor. So we'll turn it over to our Clerk.
Thank you, Matthew.
Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Does this work? Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Tina Harris, the Clerk and Recorder, and I am here to talk to you a little bit about some of the measures, some of the different, what did you call these? I'm sorry, Matt.
Measures. These are performance measures and community indicators, yeah.
I apologize for that. So the first thing that we have on here is our motor vehicle lobby wait times. Over time, we have adjusted this. I see that there's a goal of less than 30 minutes, but our goal really now is 20 minutes or less. And so that is something that I think that we could adjust on this. And as you can see, we did have a spike in 2018 and 2019, and that was due to our drives system. That was the conversion from going from one system to another. And so during that time, we had to update our address locator. And so that's why it took us about 2 years to get back underneath the 30-minute goal. Right now, you see, even 2020, our goal went down drastically, or the wait times went down drastically to 22 minutes, and then 2022 we're at 11 minutes, and we are hovering at about 11 minutes right now. And one of the reasons, because the remote motor vehicle transactions, that next section, you will see that our online services have increased. So people are moving towards the online services. And that's our self-service kiosk. We have 3 of them throughout the county. And they can do multiple things at the kiosk. When it was originally implemented, they could only do renewals. Now they can get duplicate registrations, they could get tab replacements, they can even check the status of their title on that. So that allows them to do other services outside of our office. And the online service you see a trend. It continues to go up because a lot of folks, it looks like in 2023, over 163,000 transactions were done online. And that really helps out our office, and it really helped out during COVID because they can go out and get new plates for their vehicle if it's a new purchase and the title's been transferred into their name. They can do plate replacements, tab replacements, change their address. They could request duplicate titles, and it doesn't require them to actually come into our office. So we have seen an increase in both of those areas. And then as far as the motor vehicle transactions completed per employee, I'd like to point out that this is an average. Not every employee completes that many transactions in a year. It's pretty close, but it's more of an average. And as you can see, there's been a decline in that. And that is attributed to the remote services being offered. And then also, there was a time that there wasn't any inventory vehicles being sold. The car lots were empty for over a year. And then we also contribute that to the higher interest rates. So they're not buying as many cars as they used to. They're not refinancing cars. And so now you see a decrease in the transactions per employee that's being conducted at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk and Recorder. Are you done with your presentation?
I am done with my presentation.
Then I think this would be a good opportunity to see if we have any questions or comments for you.
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens, do you have any wisdom you'd like to share?
Oh, gosh. No, well, I'm glad to see that the numbers are going down, and I've kind of, we've witnessed that, and, as we walk past in the lobby, that people aren't as waiting as long, and there's not as, I think there's visibly less sort of grumbling, I don't know, or like people feeling like, they're keep poking in, or, that kind of stuff. I mean, so it's very obvious that people are satisfied and getting served really quickly. So I really appreciate that, the work that you're doing in that. And I just want to say that I use the kiosk. Not that I don't like to interact with your employees, but it's so easy. And I mean, it's really easy to figure out, and it's really quick, and you get those tabs right away. And so if you're like me and you maybe procrastinate till the very last minute and you want to get something done on a Sunday, you can go into and use those. And can you remind me where those locations are? I know one's at the King Soopers on JFK Parkway, but.
Yes, and then King Soopers on North College, and then there King Soopers in Loveland. It is the South King Soopers.
Okay.
What is the name? 14th Street. Is it 14th Street? Yeah, okay.
Great.
I was like, I don't know the specific, I could drive you there.
Maybe you'll need to if I don't get my
Okay.
plates in time.
I'm happy
Okay,
to do
hopefully
that.
that won't happen. But yeah, no, this is great. I appreciate the work that you're doing to, and I imagine that a lot of people are using the online services. I mean, we've kind of grown accustomed to that in a lot of parts of our lives of using those services. So, yeah, just thanks for the report. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a couple of questions, Tina. Regarding the lobby wait times, the slide, the information on the left, does your office do any type of customer satisfaction surveys, or so either through a survey or perhaps anecdotally you get feedback from folks? I'm sure there's less grumbling, but I wonder if you folks have any way of determining how happy people are, if they have any suggestions on further improvements.
Sure, we do offer a Tell Us More, so it is a Survey Monkey. We also have cards at the desk that we hand out, and I would say 98% of every person we see has positive feedback for us. So I know that seems odd in this, but that's really what we're working for. You're working towards, and I would say that goal, you're always going to have something didn't work out for someone, and that's where we start hearing more of the negative. But as far as, reducing those wait times, currently, through COVID, we had by appointment only. And now that things have opened back up and people are ready to get back out there, now it's a hybrid of that. So we have appointments and we went back to walk-ins.
Great, thank you. Just two more questions. One is, I know that when I attended, or I was at a site visit at the Pueblo County Human Services Building, I think it was Pueblo County, last year, or whenever it was, it seemed like the security folks were very helpful in directing people. So I'm curious, with our security people who are primarily stationed on the first floor, what kind of interaction, what kind of training do you provide, perhaps does your office provide, so they know where to direct folks and how to be helpful, other than just keeping an eye and making sure that there's good public safety?
Because they're the first almost the first people they see when they walk in the building. They do, so they'll ask questions and they direct them to the kiosk for service. We don't train them on answering questions because it's so detailed and we don't want there to be any misinformation out there. So we do train them to send them down to the kiosk, and they will, based on what service they need. We've just updated our kiosk too, so it's, so they could take their own number now where we don't have to actually hand those tickets out.
And of course, I was not suggesting that they should be trained to answer questions that your folks are answering, but and maybe it's a broader question, and that is, how informed are they when people come into the first floor? Do they know to send people to the second floor, or, other floors? So I wonder if anyone knows the answer to that.
Well, I know that they do provide a lot of direction. I think that they probably, I don't know that there's training that's involved. I think they are so good that they familiarize themselves with the building. And then we also have that kiosk, that directory kiosk on the first floor as well. And I see them helping use that as well.
Great, thank you. And then my last question, and I think I know the answer, but regarding the online transactions, so when I got my new tags this year, I did online through the Department of Revenue, the motor vehicle. It's not through the county, right? That all goes through the state, and then ultimately we get our tags or whatever. Is that correct?
That's correct. Now, there are some online services that do get sent back to the county, like
Okay.
duplicate titles, person with disability placards. Those will get sent back to the county for us to process. But as far as your registration, getting a new plate or renewal, those are mailed out directly from the state.
That's right.
They're called print on demand. So as you request it, it gets printed, your plate gets printed and sent to you.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, Commissioner, of course.
Yeah, I just want to ask, so I know that your office does a lot more than this, and so I don't know if we've ever captured metrics for anything else, and I think about like elections, and I think about how many people like use remote sites versus some of that kind of information might be interesting as we look into, different metrics in the future of, like I've seen some things around how many passports you guys do. That number's pretty amazing.
Right.
So, I don't know, when you work with Matthew or others, like it might be interesting to see some of those kind of things because this is just one portion of the work that you do, and you do a lot of great work in our building and throughout the community, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if if we, put our heads together and think what might be interesting, and I'm sure you're logging all those numbers to see how many people you have to put at the King Supers or the Safeway to collect ballots and, when traffic happens there and stuff like that, but just kind of curious about that information
That would
too.
be information that I think is very valuable to the
Yeah,
community.
great.
I'd be
Right.
happy to provide whatever, we could come to some agreement as to what you would like to see. And what
Sure,
we think
yeah.
that the public would like to.
Right, yeah, I think I would have to give that more thought, but, it just would be kind of curious. And I know you have a lot of mandates around where you're required to have, how many voting centers and sites you have, and I know that that's increased in the past, so be kind of curious to see like how well used some of those spaces are, and I know you have some leeway, I think, in some elections to not open every single spot, is that correct? Or-
Correct. So for the coordinated election, I only have to have 3 VSPs open, which are voting centers. I only have to have 3. One is here, and then we have to have one on each of the campuses. So CSU and Front Range Community College. But we go above and beyond that because of the size of the county. And so we have one at Drake Center, and we do have one in Estes Park. The one in Estes Park, we have reduced the days that it is open based on the data that we have, acquired. So the days leading up to election, one of the decision came from the day leading up to election, very few people use that site. So there are days that either 0, maybe 3, and use the site. So, and it takes about 13 staff members to staff a VSPC. And so it's very hard to staff that Estes Park location. So we took that down to 2 days.
Right, so it's great that you're using the data that you are collecting to say, hey, this isn't cost effective and we
Right.
want to put these people in place when they're really needed and not to sit there and, frankly, do almost nothing. It sounds like on certain days, so, yeah.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah, let's kind of put our heads together and kind of see, but I think that the public would be really interested in some of that too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great.
And thanks for your work on that. I know it's a lot to put together.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Great suggestion, Commissioner. Lorinda, is there anything you'd like to add before we move on to our next area?
No, I think you all have been great partners, so when we have an announcement we'd like to make for the 11-minute wait time, we are able to put things downstairs for folks to see as they come to do business in the county, and we appreciate that partnership as well very much. I wish we could count how many trips we save, how many phone calls we save by doing that kind of thing.
Great. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you.
We'll now move on, I believe, to the treasurer and the public trustee.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate you putting these together. So our report this year will show a trend. I think you'll see is very similar to the Clerk and Recorder's trend with more people using our services online, which we were hoping for, and I think COVID propelled that for us a little bit. We were fortunate enough to have things in place to have the online services available, and the Dropbox was put up in February right before we were hit with COVID. So the Dropbox in the front of the building was fortuitous. I guess the timing was incredible. You'll see the percent of property taxes collected last year, 2022, was 99.51%. This year, we're tracking a little bit better. We're at 99.27% year-to-date. We still have two more months of collection in that process with our tax lien sale occurring on November 16th. That will be live at the ranch. There are very few counties that continue to provide the services of the tax lien sale live. The reason we don't provide that online is we feel that we need to collaborate and partner with the investors that are investing in Larimer County. We want them to know us, and we want to know them. And it's hard to do when they're bidding from another state. When they phone us and they have a question, we have a relationship with them. We've partnered with them, and we know who they are. They're usually repeat investors, and so we've built on that premise that we're creating some partnerships with the investors in Larimer County. The number of courtesy delinquent notices provided to mobile homeowners, those are considered orange tags. They're not required by state statute, but we do those in September. We actually send 2 people out in the field. And with the legislation that passed last year, reducing the value of property, or if your manufactured home is $28,000 or less, it's exempt from property taxes. So you'll see this year we served 154 compared to the 640 last year. You'll see that it made a huge difference for those who are having challenges paying their property taxes. Really excited for that. Unfortunately, we believe that the new assessment values, the new values will increase and put a lot of mobile homes back on the tax roll. So we'll see what that does with the new values. Electronic payments, we're year-to-date, we're at 36,470, whereas last year combined, all electronic payments were 32,034. Going down to the tax lien sale, last year's tax lien sale was 1,272. This year, year-to-date, we're at 1,016. Some of those are potentially the manufactured homes, but we're 256 properties less. We have taken a more active role. I can't thank the staff enough, especially Donna, who has spearheaded the program to actually call people, email people. We're finding emails through the resources that we've subscribed to. We're emailing people. They're sending us, a lot of them are, they're sending us all kinds of payments, either electronic or checks. And we ask for a spreadsheet for a lot of the large developers who have maybe 50 to 100 lots, maybe even up to 200 on some of them that are delinquent. Send us a spreadsheet and a wire. That way, we can just upload it into our system. We don't have to manually enter all of those repetitively. That's been really helpful too. It cuts down a lot on the time, staff time. As you may know or you may not know, we had 14 people in the office working property taxes in 1986, and we have doubled since that time frame, and now we have 12 people in the office, plus we have public trustee duties. So you can see technology, the right people and the right jobs make a difference on how speedy we can get things done and how little time it takes to do our processes. The Public Trustee's Office has been an interesting learning curve for a lot of us. You know, thankfully, Todd took that bull by the horns and created a really much more streamlined process. Most everything now is online, whereas before our foreclosures were not online. They were in person once a week. People would have to drive down to this building for a foreclosure sale. We've put that online, so now people don't have to drive for that. And it's very quick, which is kind of nice. It's, you know, we don't like these times, you know, when we're foreclosing on properties or selling liens on properties for taxes not being paid, but it is part of the job. And we're trying everything we can to make sure that people don't lose their homes. That's our primary focus right now at this time of year. And we had, with releases of deeds of trust, which are created when somebody either refinances or sells their property. So a release of a deed of trust is brings very little to us revenue-wise. So the Public Trustee Office is down a little bit in revenue because of those fees being, those items being lower. The total that we had last year was $15,472. Year-to-date, this year is $7,045. So it's almost in half. And that's a direct relationship to, we believe, interest rates increasing. People are not purchasing and they're not refinancing as much as they were when interest rates were lower. I do not believe I have any more data for you. We do have a survey. You asked Tina, we have a customer service survey. We get about the same amount, maybe even more, 99%, I would say. And it is the 1% of folks who we just can't make them happy, unfortunately. There are a few, but most everybody we see is just very kind, and the staff members do such a great job.
Thank you. Thank you, Irene.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Stevens, any questions or comments?
Probably more comments than questions. I appreciate the work that you all do, and I appreciate how leanly your office operates. You know, to be working with less people than you were in the 80s. I mean, that's partly due to, I mean, technology, but it's also due to the fact that, you know, you're a good leader and the people that work for you work efficiently. So I appreciate that. I just really want to thank you for your philosophy around, you know, having the lien sale live. I think that is, I'm not sure, I think other people don't know the value of that but I really believe that your philosophy is to keep things in the community. I mean, you said it yourself, you're trying to have people not lose their homes, not get into these financial difficult situations, calling people, finding their emails, really trying to do that. That's above and beyond, and that shows how much you care about the people in our community. So I just appreciate that, because that is a step. I mean, it's a step that a lot of counties just don't go to, and so you're all to be commended for that work. So I really appreciate that, and I'm glad the public can know about that too, because this is not a punitive kind of situation. We just really, you know, we need to collect. You need to collect what you need to collect, but you do it in a way that feels very humane and, again, shows a lot of care for our community. So I just really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. And I don't believe I have any questions. I would certainly echo the comments you've just heard and perhaps add that, the information you shared about how your staffing many years ago and now, I think that's a testament to assembling, a good team and certainly technology and, you've continued to be efficient, lean, but not at the expense of customer service. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to pay in installments online. I appreciate the email notifications. I think that's really, really helpful. And I also have to say, don't want this to all go to your heads too much. No, I think Irene or Madam Treasurer, Trustee, you've demonstrated a lot of leadership in the mobile home park space, making sure that folks are notified so their homes, we take every step possible so their homes don't go up for a tax lien sale. And we know some of the history of that and how that can really affect people who are just not aware. Maybe there are language barriers or that sort of thing. So you've been a real leader on that, what we do locally above and beyond, and then also in the policy space, with trying to get legislation that has limited unintended consequences and all of that. So thanks to your team and thanks to you and your team. And don't have any questions. I suppose, like with the clerk and recorder, any thoughts you have on other metrics, we should, performance metrics, we or you all should be considering. I don't know if you've thought about that.
I
Maybe
did.
this covers.
Right, there are a lot of metrics in our office that we don't have control over. Foreclosures, for example, and most everything we do, there's really no control over. Interest rates, for example. Interest rates were awful 2 years ago. They've started to increase the last year and a half. Therefore, the interest income has increased tremendously for Larimer County and other authorities within the communities. So those are things we don't have control over. We do have control over safety of our invested funds. And my philosophy is to make sure that I follow my investment policy, review it annually, and every purchase we make follows that investment policy to the T. Those things are important. Safety first.
Well, and again, one of the guiding principles of the county, of course, is to be good stewards of our financial resources and all the other resources that we have some, oversight over.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Lorinda, once again, do you have any, I'm sure you have some wonderful wisdom to add to this conversation.
I don't know how much wisdom, but I will say that the treasurer's office works closely with our IT staff to upgrade their systems continuously, so they don't wait for a big upgrade. It's a continuous improvement process. So this idea of always doing better, always being more efficient is a daily effort on their part, and we really do appreciate working together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And by the way, a plug for IT, incredible team. We are so fortunate and so blessed to have them and their customer service attitude. We're their customer and they work with us. They're responsive. They listen to our needs. There was a time when that wasn't really the case, that we were told what we needed. And that philosophy has long since gone. And I think it really helps with morale too. Say, I would really like this in the new build of our system. Okay. And then it happens. It's quite magical.
Well, wonderful. Thank you, Lorinda, and thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
I think we can move on and hope that you continue to have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Oh. The assessor's office, the other side of the hall.
Hello.
Welcome, folks.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Yara. I'm our deputy assessor, and I'm joined by Lisa Teamy, our director of assessment administration. And we are reviewing 2022. So as you all know, we revalue all property in the county every odd year. So 2022 was an intervening year, which means that most folks in the county did not receive a notice of valuation. They will only receive a notice of value if they have a special circumstance, such as if they are new construction, if there's a change of use. Otherwise, the values will be the same as they were at the end of 2021 after we went through that appeal process. Most of 2022 is really focusing for the year ahead and getting everything ready for 2023 when we have to do another revaluation. So some of our metrics here for 22, we have the COD, or the coefficient of dispersion, and lower numbers mean that we're more accurate. The COD is the average difference a group of numbers has from the median. We look at the median because the mean can be thrown off a bit by outliers. So the median is a more accurate measure. And this helps us make sure that we are valuing like properties similarly. To pass our audit, which we are audited every year to make sure that we are valuing fairly and equitably, we have to have a COD below 15.99 for residential properties. And in 2022, we had 6.3. And I am proud of that number, and we passed our audit with flying colors, as we have every year. The number of properties per appraiser is something else I keep my eye on. In 2022, it was a little over 10,000, 10,400. And I think our county is just growing, and we have done our best to innovate and to not have to add more FTEs. We have added data collectors to our staff, and they can take away some of that burden of just the data collection work where you might not need to have an appraisal license. So that's one way we've tried to lessen the burden on the appraisal staff, but it has been very busy for everybody. Inbound calls, a little over 11,500 in 2022. We really pride ourselves on answering calls as they come in. Folks usually don't wait even 5 minutes. Even during our really busy times, it's about 10 minutes that they are waiting, unless it's a really hectic day during protest this year. But typically, it's not much of a hold time, and we don't make folks go through a bunch of prompts. They call and they get a live person. And because of that, we get a lot of questions that don't necessarily pertain to our office, but we do our best to transfer folks where they need to go. And our front staff are very well versed in the many things that we do in our office, and most of the time they are able to answer the questions they're getting without having to transfer that call. So we do our best to provide really excellent customer service. Property transfers in 2022 is a little down. I think it might actually be a little less than the number we have here, more around 13,500. So we might want to adjust that. But I mean, that's just the change of ownership that's happened within the county in that year. I think there might have been a slowdown towards the end of the year with interest rates rising, but we process those as they come in. And then protests for 2022 was just a really great year for us. We had 793 protests, is a record low. What you're seeing here is other reappraisal years. However, if I were to include intervening years, it still is a record low to have under 1,000 protests. I think it really is a testament to our values being pretty darn good in 2021 and accurate. And we made a lot of changes to make sure that we are very responsive to folks and allowing them to schedule appointments online, allowing them to schedule phone appointments. So I think people got their questions answered, and if the adjustment was warranted, they received it. And if it wasn't, we had a bit more time in 2021 to explain that. So I think all of that contributed to a very low number of protests in 2022. Our office is always innovating. There's a lot that goes on within the assessor's office that folks aren't aware of. So some things I'll highlight, and this is by no means a complete list, but we take care of damage assessment work for the county. Whenever there is a natural disaster or a house fire, we are out there to make sure we pick that up. You don't pay property taxes if your house burns down, so we need to make sure to pick up that data and prorate for the rest of the year. And one of the changes we've done is collaborating more with other departments within the county so that that information is not just used for property tax purposes, but it's also used to inform homeowners of the status of their property. And because of that, we have been going out after disasters much more quickly than we used to. So we created a designated damage assessment team. We have now an on-call team, so folks are ready to go on the weekend. Every weekend, there is an appraiser available, and they are compensated for that time that they are setting aside to be available, whether or not they need to go out. And that just allows us to have that rapid response and to not be scrambling if a disaster should occur on a Friday night or on a holiday, which is when it tends to happen. Senior exemptions are another thing that we process within our department. Lisa Teamy oversees all of that and does an excellent job of maintaining the list and keeping people informed of when they're eligible. And we also handle suppression requests. So the legislator sets certain categories, and if you fall within that category, you can have your property information suppressed online. And we handle those requests as they come in as well and are able to hide that information typically for public safety. So that is just an overview of some of the things that we've done in the last year. Really, 2022 was a big year of gearing up for 2023. We had to make sure our model was set, that we've studied the market. Everything in 2023, all the values set in 2023 were based on the market on June 30th, 2022. So there's a lot of studying that goes into making sure those values are accurate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yara. Commissioner Stevens, do you have any questions or comments?
Sure, I have some comments. So first of all, thank you for explaining the coefficient of dispersion for residential properties, because that is not the easiest concept.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the explanation, which is, I've struggled with that in the past, but I appreciate the very clear explanation of how that works. And kudos to all of you for keeping that as low as it is. So that speaks volumes. And for answering calls, as they come in. I've actually had calls transferred to me, which that came to your office, but were actually for me. And so I know that you guys are on top of those calls. So obviously this year was a bit of an anomaly, the current year. So we'll see some different numbers. I just want to say that I really appreciate your staff's work this year, because I know that it was, you have to value, you have a model, you value things as accurately as you possibly can, and things have went up. And so I think that you dealt with some people that weren't always happy. And I will say, in passing through people, you had stations set up in the hallway for people to come in and meet with folks. And I will say that I never heard any. Your staff was always calm and professional and courteous, and the people who were there were calmed by that presence. And so, even though it was just wanted to acknowledge that I know it was a difficult year, and like I said, these numbers, at least the protest numbers and some of those others will vary a little bit more. But I thought that you handled everything very well, and so just wanted to give kudos to your department for that. And then let me see if I wrote some notes. So. And then, thanks for talking about some of the other work. So I didn't, I think I realized that you had an on-call team for the damage assessments, but that's great information, because it's such a time of uncertainty for people who've lost, pretty much everything in a disaster or a fire. And so having that service available right away is really important. So just, I guess I don't really have any questions for you, but I appreciate seeing these metrics, and it will be interesting to see them next year as we, like I said, this year was an anomaly, but certainly not having only 790 last year. Maybe 2024 will be a calmer.
We'll see. So about the COD, I just wanted to point out that getting it as low as it is takes a lot of collaboration. I don't think the public always knows all that goes into building a model, but that model is reviewed by appraisers. Their feedback is taken back to the modeler, and we do look into areas, make sure if there's an area with a high COD, what caused that. I mean, we go back and forth throughout the year until May 2023 when things are set. So there's a lot of collaboration with the appraisers that are experts in their area to make sure that those values are accurate. And 2023 was a rough year. So you will see this time next year, I'll point out that we had 36,000 appeals this year. So that was a record high, but it also is something that we saw in every county around the state with the market appreciating as much as it did. And I will say we actually tend to get a lot of positive feedback from the public. Even though they're not happy with their property value going up, they do tend to be very happy with the service they receive. And our appraisers take the time to explain why the values are what they are. Because our calendar and how we set values is pretty confusing for someone coming into this fresh. And a lot of folks don't realize that we have to base it on June 30th, 2022, which is when values were at an all-time high. So we don't get much say in that. And if we consider anything after that date, we would fail our audit. So we're kind of
Right,
bound by our
you-
requirements.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that and explaining that to members of the public who didn't understand that. I mean, I definitely, it's a funny thing about property values because you actually do want your property values to rise. I mean, you certainly don't want to be in, to know that your house is worth more is good. And yet, it can be troubling because people understand the tax burden portion as well. So, it's a tricky business to be in. And I actually had talked to a resident who I said, well, there's a protest, there's these options. And they said to me, oh, I think my property is worth that much. I just don't want to pay the taxes on it. That's a different conversation, right? And that's something that you or even, we don't, really, we can control it a little bit, I guess. We can change those numbers and we've talked about how we might do that. But, certainly your office can't change, how much a person pays in taxes.
Right.
And the appraisal is the position. So when you talk about and I appreciate always kind of tweaking the model. And so I think that that's really valuable for the public to understand is saying that, if you do see these discrepancies that you address those right away. You can try to figure out why, maybe some neighborhoods, their valuation went up 100%, versus, maybe everybody else's was typically 40%. So with that coefficient of dispersion number, do you anticipate that that number will change next year, or do you feel like the modeling is roughly?
I do think we're in a good place. We're always looking at what can bring it down a bit, but bringing it down a bit is like bringing it from 6.3 to 6.1. We're at the point where we're really fine tuning, because the way it works is we're going to have to pick up other data collection points for a property, and we're doing that right now. We have our data collectors out right now collecting data that we might not have on the record for 2025. So we're always thinking ahead on how we can tweak that a bit. But there is also a floor. I don't know if there's a set number, but if somebody, for example, had a COD of 1, that would be a red flag as well, because there is differences within neighborhoods and they're not all the same. So there is a sweet spot, and I think we're really close to it.
Yeah, that's good to know. And this will be my last question, sorry, Commissioner, but with the idea of if there's, trying to get additional information to inform the model, if somebody knows that they have maybe less square footage than shows up on, something or some kind of anomaly, can they call you, and how does that work?
Absolutely, yeah. We always want to make sure that we have accurate records so folks can go online and see exactly what we have for their property. And if it's incorrect, we need to know that so that we can correct it. And if there is some sort of clerical error on our end, we will make an adjustment and fix that value. Everybody can protest every single year, and they can also file for an abatement every January if they miss protests. So there's multiple chances to let us know if we have it wrong.
Okay. And I think, I think it was, that came up when I was in Risk Canyon, and somebody said, well, I don't have that many square feet or whatever. And I said, well, then you need to call the assessor's office and, right away and let them know that, because they, that's the only way they would know to correct it. They're not, continually kind of measuring the square footage of your home,
Right, yeah.
So,
if there's an inventory issue, we take that information at any time and we will adjust it.
great. thank you. Well, thanks for the work that you do. Appreciate it. Appreciate the metrics. And yeah, I'll let Commissioner Kafales take a turn.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. So I too want to commend you. These are good, really good numbers for 2022, and it will be interesting to see how these numbers play out in 2023. So well-deserved in terms of the work that's being done. So thank you. A couple of questions I have regarding, for example, and I too, I think I have a better understanding of coefficient of dispersion, so I'm getting there. Maybe a couple more times. But regarding the number of properties per appraiser, is there a way to break that out into appraisals done in unincorporated parts of the county, the municipalities? Because I know one of the issues that we heard, I think especially from rural areas like Red Feather Lakes, was that maybe we weren't able to get appraisers on the ground. So I'm wondering if there's a way to break that information out to unincorporated, incorporated, perhaps a residential, and all the non-residential categories as far as number of appraisers. That's a question I put on the table. And then regarding the reference to the senior homestead exemption, there are other types of exemptions like the military veterans 100% disability or the Gold Star. I think it would be helpful to know, how many folks are benefiting from those exemptions, especially the senior one, especially because we see that changing demographic. So I think that would be an example of information that I believe would be helpful. Is that stuff y'all can do, and do you think that's a good idea?
I can speak to the number
Yes, Lisa?
the numbers of seniors are about 19,000 total.
That took that homestead exemption?
Have the homestead exemption, so that's between the ones that we have taken in, the ones that already existed, and then, of course, it nets out the ones that we take off due to a sale or a death. So it's constantly being maintained. We have about 800 of the 100% permanent and total disabled veterans and several dozen Gold Star spouses.
That's great, and again, food for thought, whether we should show that in future, performance measure presentations. And I'm wondering, with regard to the 19,000 seniors who are benefiting from the homestead exemption, off the top of your head, what's the fiscal impact of that, which ultimately the county or the state has to?
Yeah, the state does reimburse us dollar for dollar. I would say the probably most prevailing is around $700.
Say that again?
$700 or so dollars. It depends on what the mill levy is. So in places where the mill levy is $150, then they'll get a $1,000 credit. City of Fort Collins is usually around $650.
Yeah.
So
And then you multiply that by 19.
that's the dollar amount that the people save.
Right,
if
but
that's
in
what
terms
you're-
of the overall fiscal impact, in other words, the reduced revenue on property taxes that the state backfills, what's the cumulative amount?
I think it was 12 million last
Okay.
time. Yeah. Statewide, it's around 200 million.
Yeah.
Not all counties have quite as many age-in-place people as we do.
Thank you, Lisa.
And Commissioner, I can get you a list of properties per each appraiser. We try to give our appraisers equal territory sizes, and then our senior appraisers will take commercial territories, whereas our appraiser ones will focus more on residential. We have one or two folks who will focus on ag. So there's different specialties within the staff, and I can get you an idea of that.
And again, honestly, I'm not sure if I need a list of all that, but it's just something to think about for the future, whether or not a little bit of a breakout might help inform the conversation, that's all.
Sure. Yeah, I think there are other metrics that we could add on to here, and happy to work with Matthew to update it for next year.
I'm not sure. That's all I have. Lorenda, this is your afternoon. Do you wish to add anything?
Apparently it is. I will say thank you. So the assessor's office is working with our office and the clerk's office to improve the kind of protest BOE process that we use. When there are only 793, it's pretty easy to manage on a manual process. When you get into this year's volume, weaknesses in the system began to show. And so all three offices have been working so closely together and will continue to over the next year to try to fine tune who does what and what the roles look like. And the attorney's office is involved to make sure that we do things according to statute. But we think we can be more efficient, and I appreciate your openness, both of you, to sitting down and sort of opening everything up and saying, what can we do better? So thank you very much for that. I think while taxpayers may not like to get that notice of value, we hope that their experience when they get to the county is smooth, and we hope that our staff is able to manage it in a smooth and easy way too, so that we're not duplicating work. So appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, colleagues, on this side of the table? Thank you very much, colleagues on that side of the table. And
Thank you,
Matthew,
Commissioner.
is there anything else that we need to address? Then, it's been a good meeting, good updates, good information. At 2:21 PM, we are adjourned. And thanks to the TV folks, Chris.